When a police officer says, "Sign the ticket or I'll arrest you," the natural reaction is fear and a rush to resolve the situation as quickly as possible. That's understandable. But it's also the moment when most drivers make decisions without enough information. This phrase is often misunderstood. The driver assumes that signing means admitting guilt for the violation, and out of fear of being arrested, signs without questioning anything. But in most American states, that signature actually serves a different function. It simply confirms that you received the citation and are committing to handle the matter as instructed, whether that means appearing in court, paying the fine, or contesting it within the deadline.
The central issue here isn't the ticket itself. It's the lack of clarity about what's actually being asked in that moment. Without understanding the difference between acknowledging receipt and admitting guilt, the driver signs under pressure and later treats the ticket as if the case is already closed, without realizing there's still room to contest it. This confusion is common because the encounter moves fast and leaves no time for reflection. The driver is focused on immediate consequences, losing time, being detained, complications at work or in daily life, not on how that document will affect the process later in court or with insurance. That's exactly what we're going to clarify from here on, what the signature really represents, what to do during the stop without creating conflict, and how that protects your right to contest the ticket later, based on facts rather than fear. The mental conflict that happens in this moment is simple to understand. Comply immediately or pause and ask questions. Most drivers choose the first option because questioning feels risky when you're standing in front of a police officer and hear the word arrest. Some officers present the signature as if it were an absolute obligation, without further explanation. This reinforces the driver's belief that they're confirming the violation. But there's an important legal difference between two types of signature. One is acknowledgement that you received the document and a promise to appear or resolve the matter within the deadline. The other would be an admission of guilt. In practice, in most American states, what's being requested on a traffic citation is the first type, not the second. That difference seems small, but it isn't. It determines whether or not you still have the right to contest the ticket afterward. If the driver understands the signature as a confession, they tend to simply pay the fine, accept the points on their license, and absorb the insurance increase, believing there's nothing more to be done. If they understand the signature as merely a procedural step, they know they can still take the case to court, present their version of events, question the stop itself, or even identify flaws in the officer's procedure. How you respond in that moment, calm, silence, nervousness, arguing, also gets recorded even informally in the officer's memory and in some cases on body or dash cameras. This can influence how the case is described later, if it's contested. That's why this specific moment matters so much, not because it determines whether you're guilty or innocent, but because it determines whether or not you preserve your procedural rights going forward. A driver who signs while fully understanding what they're doing leaves that encounter in a much stronger position than a driver who signs out of fear, without knowing what that paper represents. The goal from here on is exactly to close that gap in understanding, to show that there is a correct, legal, non-confrontational response you can give in that moment, without taking on additional risk and without giving up any rights. A common mistake in this moment is reacting with anger or frustration. Some drivers, feeling they're being treated unfairly, start arguing, raise their voice, or refuse to cooperate without actually knowing the law in their state. That reaction is emotionally understandable, but it almost always makes the situation worse. The goal in this moment isn't to win an argument on the side of the road. The officer isn't the one who ultimately decides whether you're guilty or innocent of the violation. That's up to the court. Arguing there, trying to prove you're right, or insisting the ticket is unfair, doesn't change the legal outcome of the case. It only increases the risk of the situation escalating. An impulsive reaction can lead to real and unnecessary consequences. Additional charges like disorderly conduct or obstruction, delays before you're released, the need for backup officers, or even temporary detention until things calm down. None of that helps the driver defend themselves later. On the contrary, it creates more problems on top of the original one, which was just a traffic ticket. The main point here is understanding that protecting your rights doesn't require confrontation. You can disagree with the ticket, you can believe the stop was unfair, you might even be right about that, and still the right place to prove it is in court, not on the shoulder of the road. Staying calm in this moment isn't a sign of weakness or of accepting guilt, it's strategy. Many drivers only realize this afterward, that they were making decisions driven by fear and adrenaline in the moment, rather than by knowledge of the law. That's exactly the pattern we want to break. When you know ahead of time what the signature means and how to respond calmly and clearly, you eliminate much of that emotional reaction, because fear usually comes from uncertainty, from not knowing what's happening or what might happen next. Knowing there's a correct response that protects your rights without creating conflict completely changes how you experience that moment. You stop reacting on impulse and start acting with control, even while facing an authority figure and even while disagreeing with the situation. That calm, clear, and legally sound response is exactly what we'll present in the next part. Now, the central point of this video: what to say exactly when an officer says, "Sign the ticket or I'll arrest you." The recommended response is simple, calm, and direct. "Officer, I am not admitting guilt. Am I being required to sign only as acknowledgement or promise to appear?" This phrase works because it does three things at once. First, it clearly states, verbally and on record, that you are not admitting to the violation, which may be relevant later if the case goes to court. Second, it directly asks the officer to clarify what the signature represents in that moment, which removes any ambiguity about what you're agreeing to do. Third, it shows cooperation and respect. Without confrontation, you're not refusing to sign, you're simply asking for clarity before doing so. This approach changes the tone of the interaction. Instead of a confrontation between driver and authority, you turn the moment into an objective question about procedure. Most officers are used to this kind of question and will answer directly because explaining what's being requested is part of the protocol. The emotional effect of this response also matters. Instead of feeling forced to confess to something or feeling like they're losing control of the situation, the driver regains a sense of clarity. They're not challenging the officer's authority, not arguing about the validity of the ticket right there. They're simply making sure the record reflects reality, receipt of the citation, not admission of guilt. It's worth reinforcing that this phrase doesn't stop the officer from issuing the ticket, doesn't cancel the violation, and isn't a way to get out of the situation. It exists to preserve your procedural standing, making clear from the start what your signature actually means. After asking this question and signing, in the sense of acknowledging receipt too, the driver keeps all their options intact, contesting the ticket in court, presenting evidence, questioning the procedure of the stop, or negotiating the penalty, depending on the state and type of violation. That's the difference between leaving that stop feeling like you lost control and leaving knowing exactly what your next step is. After the stop is over, the most important stage of the whole process begins, and it's exactly the stage most people skip. The first step is to keep the ticket somewhere safe without marking it up or losing any information. This document contains essential data: the violation code, the deadline to respond, instructions on how to contest or pay it, and identification of the officer and patrol vehicle. It's also important to write down as soon as possible the details of the stop while the memory is still fresh: what the officer said, the approximate time, road conditions, whether there were any witnesses present, and whether there was any camera in the area or on the patrol vehicle itself that might have recorded the moment. It's also worth checking traffic cameras or cameras from nearby businesses that might have captured the scene. These details, which seem irrelevant in the moment, can be decisive later if the case is contested. It's essential to understand that contesting the ticket doesn't happen on the shoulder of the road during the stop. It happens afterward, formally in court, or before the traffic authority responsible for that type of citation. That's the moment, not the moment of the stop, when the driver presents their version of events, questions possible errors in the procedure, and seeks to reduce or dismiss the penalty when there's legal grounds to do so. What truly protects your rights is the combination of three factors: staying calm during the stop, understanding exactly what the signature represents, and acting in an organized way afterward, gathering information and seeking guidance on the options available in your state. In the end, the driver who comes out of these situations stronger isn't the one who shouts the loudest or refuses to cooperate. It's the one who understands the process, knows what the next step is, and acts with strategy instead of acting purely out of fear. Every time you're pulled over, the most important moment isn't the ticket itself, it's how you react. Knowing that the signature, in most states, is not an admission of guilt completely changes the outcome of that situation. Knowing what to say, without confrontation and without fear, protects your rights even before anything reaches court. You don't need to shout, argue, or resist in order to defend yourself. You need calm, knowledge, and strategy. That's what separates someone who leaves that stop in a position of strength from someone who leaves losing rights without even realizing it. If this video helped you better understand your rights, like it and subscribe to the channel. This kind of information could be exactly what protects you the next time you get pulled over. And if you've been through something similar, tell us about it in the comments.